Elena wasn't loud. She didn't scream at the officers, didn't shove, didn't threaten. She just stood there, holding her deed in one hand and her son's backpack in the other, while strangers waved a forged lease and laughed. They dumped her life into plastic bags and told her to figure it out. So she slept in a car and recorded a quiet plea for help. Just one video. Just one chance. She lifted her phone and, in a voice that kept breaking, said what felt impossible. "Someone stole my house." She didn't know it would find the one man she once helped without expecting anything back. She didn't know mercy has a way of circling back, even years later, sometimes wearing work boots, leather jackets, and suits with forgotten reputations. The moment he saw her face, the outcome was already written. If this story matters to you, join us. Subscribe and share. Her key slid and skipped on new brass, wrong cut, fresh screws. The garden looked like it was holding its breath. "Mom?" Theo asked. "Why are we still outside?" "Just a second," she said, and tried again because denial is a stubborn muscle. A man in a ball cap stepped into the doorway. A woman with bleached hair leaned behind him, smoke curling like punctuation. "Can I help you?" he asked. "This is my home," Elena said. "Why is there a different lock?" He chuckled. "We rent here." Been 2 weeks. "I was here Monday," she said. "Everything inside is ours." The woman shrugged. "Then your landlord sold it under you." Elena showed her license, bills, photos of Theo's birthday banner still taped above the window. Police arrived, one older and kind-eyed, one younger and stiff. They studied her phone, then the lease the man produced, clean font, tidy stamp, imaginary property manager. "Ma'am," the older officer said, "we can't determine authenticity in the field." With paperwork on both sides, this is a civil dispute. "Evict strangers from my father's house?" Elena asked. "I'm sorry," the younger officer said. From the porch, the man called, "You're trespassing on our rental. Move along." Theo pressed his forehead to the glass. Elena swallowed the shout because mothers ration panic. She turned the corner and stopped. Black trash bags lay split in the side yard. The quilt her grandmother had sewn was half in the mud. A frame with her parents' wedding photo showed a crack across her mother's smile. Theo's Lego rocket nose peeked through clover. Elena knelt and gathered what she could. The officers helped quietly, jaws tight. They left when the light went flat. 3 blocks away, under a flickering street lamp, Elena filmed because she had nothing else. "I'm Elena Cruz," she whispered. "Someone changed my locks." "The cops can't remove them because of a lease I know is fake. My son and I are sleeping in the car. If anyone knows what to do, lawyers, forms, anything, please." She panned to the bags, to Theo asleep with his hand still curled like he'd been building, then ended the clip before she cried. The video hopped fences. Neighborhood group, city forum, a reporter's inbox. A legal aid attorney asked for documents. A pastor offered a spare room. A stranger began a fundraiser. Another asked for her address. Across town, a lamp clicked on. Vincenzo Marchetti, whose signature once moved money and men, sat alone. He watched Elena breathe and pressed pause when Theo's sleeping face appeared. He remembered a supermarket aisle that smelled like citrus and panic, a young nurse turning a soda bottle into a spacer, a child matching a stranger's calm. He had tried to pay her. She had closed his hand and said, "Help someone who needs it." Elena woke to a phone, vibrating like a trapped bee. Notifications stacked. The attorney asked her to come at 9. She drove, filed what she could, and came back to her block with coffee and a dull headache. For a second, she thought a construction crew had swallowed her street. Then she saw the order. Men in denim and scuffed boots stood in a long, quiet rank along her lawn, shoulder to shoulder. Behind them, another line. Leather vests patched with years, faces set. Farther back, cameras on tripods and clipboards. 3 paces behind her, as if he had always been there, a man in a charcoal suit with a white beard and iron eyes. No one shouted. The air felt braced. The door opened. The man in the cap, Randy, stepped onto the porch and stalled. "What is this?" he asked. "You can't threaten tenants." "We're not threatening anyone," the woman in the pencil skirt said. "We're documenting." Randy nudged a plastic bin with his shoe. Theo's rocket toppled. Pieces skittered. 2 cameras caught it. A third filmed another squatter trying to roll her father's tool chest toward a gate. Someone read the serial number from a printout. Neighbors lifted phones. A drone hummed. The older officer from last night arrived, took in the formation, and lowered his shoulders. The younger asked for the lease again. The woman handed him a packet. Chain of title pulls, notary registry checks, a note about a property manager who never existed. The suited man finally spoke. "Miss Cruz," he said, voice low. "I'm Vincenzo. Years ago, you helped a girl breathe in a grocery store. Today, we'll help your home breathe." Elena couldn't tell if her knees were shaking or the earth was. Theo slipped his hand into hers and squeezed twice. Their code. "I'm okay if you're okay." She squeezed back. Cameras blinked. The lines held. Randy's lawyer called someone who didn't answer. A text buzzed with a courtroom number and a time barely an hour away. The woman in the skirt nodded as if the world had clicked into place. Elena looked at the blue paint her father insisted on because her mother loved the ocean. She looked at the wrong key, at the right faces, at the quiet army that had chosen law over volume. She inhaled. The breath reached bottom. She stepped toward the walk. And that is where the past catches the present, where an old debt becomes a new promise, and where our story opens the door to the history that brought Vincenzo Marchetti to Elena Cruz's curb. To understand it, we must go back to the day their lives first intersected unexpectedly. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us keep these stories alive. And trust me, the best part is yet to come. Now, let's get back to it. The moment Elena stepped toward the walkway, the world did what the world always does when tragedy and courage share the same frame. It watched. Her video, the one she'd whispered into the dark with shaking breath, had already begun its quiet climb hours before dawn. Someone from her neighborhood group had reposted it to a local mom's page. Someone there sent it to a tenant rights forum. A man with a podcast about housing injustice clipped 30 seconds and asked his followers to boost for awareness. A high school senior working on a sociology project added captions and hashtags. A local journalist saved it to a story draft titled Human Interest, maybe. And then it jumped platforms. A city subreddit, a Facebook community watch group with too many ex-police in the comments. A slow thread of retweets from strangers saying only, "I can't imagine." By the time the sun pressed its gold edge over the rooftops, the video had reached the screens of people who knew how rarely the system bent for mothers like Elena. It stopped on phones in laundromats, in waiting rooms, on buses making their first loop of the day. People watched because the video didn't beg. It didn't perform grief. It simply heard the truth aloud. But across the city, the video didn't just land. It struck. The Marchetti residents sat at the top of Juniper Hill, behind a wrought iron gate wrapped in vines. The house didn't look like the stories told about it. No guards at the door, no gold lions, no imported marble foyer. It looked lived in, quiet. It smelled of cedar and old books and Sunday meals. Vincenzo Marchetti sat in an armchair by a window, reading a paper that still came printed, the old way. He read it with glasses that he didn't need, but liked the weight of. His phone buzzed. At first, it was a notification shared to a community feed from one of the neighborhood volunteers he quietly funded. Usually he scrolled past, but the thumbnail stopped him. A car interior. A woman. Eyes red, but steady. A child's sleeping profile just visible behind her. He clicked play. I'm Elena Cruz. Someone changed the locks on my house. The police say they can't remove them because they have a lease I know is fake. I have proof. I just don't know what to do anymore. Her voice broke, but didn't collapse. Not once. Behind her, a quilt lay crumpled in the footwell of the car. A child's sweater was rolled as a pillow. A plastic bin of Legos with pieces missing sat wedged under a seat. It was not tragedy for spectacle. It was tragedy living beside resilience. Something old inside Vincenzo stirred. Something he'd buried under years of donations, scholarship funds, and polite boardroom charity lunch smiles. The part of him that remembered oaths and debts. He played the video again. And again. The third time, he closed his eyes halfway through because he didn't need the ending to remember the beginning. Flashback. 8 years earlier. The grocery store smelled like citrus cleaner and warm bread. A little girl, black hair in 2 messy braids, was sitting on the floor near the frozen foods section, wheezing sharp and quick. Her small hands clutched her chest, eyes wide with panic. A grandmother knelt beside her, whispering, praying, shaking, and a young nurse in blue scrubs, hair pulled back, badge still clipped to her collar, ran. No hesitation. No hesitation at all. She needs to slow her breathing, Elena said, voice soft but firm. Fast breaths make it worse. The grandmother stared at her, terrified. Her inhaler! She left it. Please. Elena looked around, scanning, mind already assembling steps. She grabbed a small plastic bottle of soda from the fridge, twisted off the cap, emptied it in the sink. She cut the bottom with a store employee's box cutter, washed it quick, and held it like a spacer over the girl's mouth. Okay, sweetheart, Elena whispered. We're going to pretend we're blowing up a balloon. Slow. Breathe with me. In. Out. In, out. The girl's breaths evened. Her heartbeat slowed. She leaned into Elena like a child leans into someone safe. By the time paramedics arrived, the emergency was over. Vincenzo came through the automatic doors minutes later, chest tight, ready for the worst, and prepared to burn the world if it had touched his family. Instead, he found his granddaughter sitting cross-legged on the floor, coloring quietly on a receipt, and a young woman kneeling beside her, staying even though her shift ended hours ago. He tried to press money into Elena's hand. She closed his fingers around it and pushed it gently back. Help someone who needs it, she said. Pass it on. Her smile was tired. Her kindness was effortless. She didn't even look back as she left. He never forgot. Back to present. Vincenzo paused the video on the frame of Elena's face. The same eyes. Older now, exhausted but unbroken. He exhaled through his nose. Not anger. Something deeper. Duty brushing the edge of memory. He reached for the phone on the table beside him. He didn't scroll his contacts. He knew the number. The man on the other end picked up on the first ring. No greeting. That was not their way. There were bonds older than introductions. Vincenzo spoke softly, like reciting a prayer. We're paying something forward." There was no dramatic oath, no pounding fist, just a simple truth landing in the world with the quiet weight of inevitability. The voice on the other end responded, "When and where?" Vincenzo looked again at the paused frame, the woman in the car trying not to fall apart. "Dawn," he said. "Her home. Bring everyone. Not soldiers, not gangsters. Men who understood respect, loyalty, debt, honor. Because some debts do not disappear. They compost into the soil. They wait for rain. And the rain had come. By morning, Elena would wake to a street she did not expect. Not chaos, not violence, but witnesses, 300 of them, standing shoulder to shoulder, and the world would begin to tilt back into balance. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe and like this video. It helps more people discover stories like this one. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now, take a deep breath, because what happens next will change everything. Elena didn't sleep so much as fade in and out of a dull, aching twilight. Her phone buzzed relentlessly against the car's cup holder. Notifications, comments, messages, but exhaustion wrapped her like wet wool. Theo slept curled up beside her, his small hand still gripping the strap of his backpack, as if someone might take even that. Just before dawn, the buzzing intensified. Dozens of missed calls, a flood of alerts from strangers and neighbors alike. Her video had spread farther than she imagined. There were messages from people offering advice, sympathy, rooms, warnings. None promised a solution. She scrolled through them slowly, eyes burning. "We're so sorry this happened. This is happening everywhere. The system is broken. Try legal aid. They sometimes do emergency filings. I know someone who helps with evictions. We'll try to connect you. Stay strong, Mama. Kindness, even digital, hurt. Kindness acknowledged the wound." Theo stirred beside her. "Mom, are we going home today?" His voice was small, heavy with sleep. She turned toward him, brushing hair from his forehead. "I hope so, baby." She didn't lie. Hope was a flimsy thing, but it was still something she could hand him without breaking. She didn't know that while she whispered to her son in the chill of morning, the city was already shifting. Across town, Vincenzo had not slept either. But his wakefulness was not the restless helplessness of Elena's. His had purpose. He sat at his kitchen table with a coffee he didn't drink and a list of numbers he didn't need written down. The air smelled of pine and old pipe smoke. Dawn hadn't touched the skyline yet. He picked up the phone. The first call went to a union foreman who owed him 3 favors and a 3rd mortgage. The second went to a pastor whose community center Vincenzo had quietly kept afloat. The third to a neighborhood contractor with a crew of 20 and a moral spine that could bend but not break. Then came the lawyers, real, clean record attorneys whose suits were pressed and whose names carried weight in municipal halls. Then came 2 retired men who had once been the kind of muscle people whispered about, now grandfathers who carried their loyalty without needing violence to express it. Then came the old guard. Not men who cracked bones, men who showed up. Each call was short. He did not explain. He simply said, "No threats, no violence, only presence, only law." And each voice replied the same way. Understood. There was no need for further instruction. They knew the code. They knew the debt. By 4:15 a.m., engines started across 5 boroughs, some loud, some quiet, all purposeful. Men put on work boots and denim. Others buttoned shirts and tightened ties. A few wore leather vests worn soft over the years, patches fading like old photographs. No one rushed. No one swaggered. They simply arrived. Elena parked 2 blocks away from her house because she couldn't bear to pass the yard where her belongings had been scattered. She needed to breathe before facing it again. She needed to remind herself she could. Theo dozed again in the back seat. She let him sleep. She gathered her folder of documents, deed copies, utility bills, her father's name signed in ink that still made her throat tighten. She had spent the early hours filling legal aid forms at a community office that smelled of printer toner and weary hope. They told her it could take weeks, maybe months. Months. She had walked out without speaking. Her body moved now on something like momentum. One foot, then the other, down the sidewalk lined with small lawns and quiet porches and morning birds that sounded too gentle for the weight in her chest. She turned the corner. Stopped. The street was full. Not chaotic. Not loud. Still. A long line of men stood shoulder to shoulder across her lawn, and the sidewalk and the curb. Their clothes were work-worn, mud-streaked denim, faded jackets, boots heavy with use. Behind them, another line, men in dark leather vests marked with patches, arms crossed, gazes steady. Farther back still, a tidy row of men and women in suits, holding briefcases and clipboards, and standing just behind the front rank. Him, the man in the charcoal suit, the white beard, the quiet gravity. Vincenzo watched her approach. He did not move forward. He allowed her the space to arrive. Neighbors peeked from windows, doors cracked open. Phones lifted, cameras blinked red. Drones hovered like curious birds. But there was no shouting, no chanting, no threat. Only presence, only witness. Elena's pulse hammered, her breath hitched. The world felt too big and too close all at once. She took one step, then another. Someone in a suit, not Vincenzo, but someone representing him, stepped forward. "Ms. Cruz," he said quietly, "we're here to help you reclaim your home legally. No one will touch anyone. No one will raise a hand. Every move today is by the book, documented and admissible. You are not alone." Elena's throat tightened to a painful knot. "Why?" she whispered. Vincenzo answered then, his voice low, carrying without needing volume. "Because once you helped my granddaughter breathe." Elena's eyes blurred. Memory flickered. The grocery store, the little girl, the makeshift spacer, the fear on an old woman's face. "I told you to pass it on," she said, voice breaking. "And we are," Vincenzo said. "Now it is our turn." A sudden noise broke the stillness, the front door of the house slamming open. Randy stepped onto the porch, face unshaven, expression twisted into something between outrage and disbelief. What is this?" he demanded. "You can't intimidate us. This is harassment. I'll call the cops." "We already did," one of the attorneys replied calmly. "They'll want to see the documents we've gathered." Fraud involving a forged lease and stolen identity carries felony charges. Randy froze. The woman behind him peeked out, cigarette trembling between her fingers. The lines of men didn't move, didn't speak, didn't glare. They just were, and in the face of that many witnesses, that many eyes, lies began to feel smaller. Elena stood in the center of it, overwhelmed, not by fear, but by something she had not felt in a long time. Being seen, being defended, not as charity, not as pity, but as a promise honored. Her vision swam. She blinked hard. She had come here prepared to fight alone. Now she wasn't alone at all. The sun was rising. The day was beginning. Everything was about to change. Randy stood on the porch, blinking into the morning light like someone waking up in the middle of a nightmare he'd created himself. He hadn't expected an audience. He definitely hadn't expected order. 300 people standing silent and steady, refusing to flinch. "Are you kidding me?" he barked, rubbing the back of his neck as though trying to wake himself. "What is this? Some kind of circus?" No one responded. Not a single voice, just the sound of wind in the birch tree above the yard, and the faint hum of cameras recording. Randy's girlfriend, Emily, stepped out behind him wearing one of Elena's old hoodies, sleeves stretched over her hands. She scanned the crowd and immediately reached for her phone, live stream already rolling. "Y'all harassing lawful tenants on my property?" she yelled into the camera. "This is illegal." "This is intimidation." A ripple of quiet disbelief passed through the neighbors watching from porches and sidewalks, the kind of disbelief that came from knowing what the truth actually was. Theo shifted at Elena's side, instinctively pressing closer into her hip. His small fingers clutched the hem of her coat. Randy noticed the movement. He smirked. "Oh, look who's back." "Mommy and the brat," he said, voice loud enough to carry. A few of the men in denim took one step forward. Not much, just enough to shift the air. Vincenzo didn't raise his hand, didn't speak, didn't need to. The line stilled immediately. Elena opened her mouth to say something, to defend her son, but the words died in her throat. Instead, it was Theo who whispered, voice tight. "That's my house." Randy shrugged, exaggerated and lazy. "Not anymore, kid." And then he kicked something, hard. A plastic bin, cracked at the corner, its lid taped to keep it from popping open. It was Theo's Lego bin. The one he had saved piece by piece, project by project, from birthdays, hand-me-downs, yard sales. The bin toppled. Bricks burst across the porch, spilling in bright, chaotic color. Pieces skittered across concrete and grass, astronaut helmets, wheels, finials, windows, the small blue cockpit from the rocket he had built with Elena the week before. The sound it made was small, almost delicate, but the silence that followed was thick. 3 different phones caught the moment. Emily's live stream kept running, still in her hand. Theo's eyes filled, but he didn't cry. His jaw clenched, a child learning sooner than he should what swallowing pain tasted like. Elena stepped forward, but another motion stopped her. A second squatter, older, jittery, eyes darting, was wheeling Elena's father's tool chest down the driveway. The heavy red Craftsman box rattled with each jolt of the wheels. The name Cruz was burned into the wooden handle, faint from time, but still readable if someone cared enough to look. One of Mr. V's men, built like an oak tree in a worn denim jacket, stepped into the path. He didn't touch the chest. He simply placed a hand on the handle. "Where are you taking that?" he asked, tone level and unmovable. The squatter startled. "This? This was in the garage. It's ours." "It belonged to her father," the man in denim said, "and the serial number is registered in an insurance claim file dated 2 years ago." The squatter's mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from water. A woman in a blazer, one of the attorneys, clicked a pen and read from a printed sheet. Serial number 77,652A, registered to Ricardo Cruz. Documented in home inventory photos dated April 11th, 2 years ago. I have the police case file from his passing and the notarized will naming Elena as inheritor. Every word was recorded, every angle documented. The squatter released the tool chest's handle like it had burned him. Behind them, another group was already at work. 2 paralegals pulling county property records on tablets, a retired city clerk checking notary logs, a church elder narrating live for neighborhood groups, a cameraman with press credentials filming everything. Nothing performed, nothing shouted, just evidence gathering itself. Randy finally realized what was happening. The swagger dropped. The smirk faltered. "You can't just—" "We aren't doing anything," the attorney replied. "We're documenting. You provided a lease. We are verifying its legitimacy, and we are compiling a fraud packet for the district attorney." Randy laughed, but there was no humor left in it. "The DA doesn't care about squatters?" The woman in the blazer raised her eyebrows. "He will when identity theft and forged notarization are involved. That's felony territory." A murmur passed through the crowd. Not excitement. Recognition. Consequences had entered the room. Emily, still live streaming, turned the camera to her own face and attempted outrage. "These people are lying! This is harassment! We're victims!" But the comments scrolling across her screen didn't agree. "Girl, you stole a kid's house. That child's toys are on the lawn. We saw—" "Return the house. It's over. Y'all are done. Stop filming. This is going viral. Oh no, not the tool chest." Emily's face paled. She ended the live stream abruptly. A neighbor, a grandmother who had lived on the block 30 years, stepped out onto her porch. She didn't raise her voice. "We all knew Ricardo," she said. "We all knew that house was his, and we all know who his daughter is. You didn't just steal a home. You stole memory." Her words settled over the street like dust from something old being shaken loose. Mr. V finally spoke. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just enough. "Randy," he said, speaking the man's name like he'd read it off an obituary. "This ends today. By the law, not by force." Randy looked at him, really looked, and something in his posture broke. Not fully, but the first crack is always quiet. Elena stood watching, her hands shaking, her breath caught somewhere mid-chest. She didn't step forward. She didn't need to. 300 people were stepping for her. Public opinion wasn't just shifting. It was turning. Not because of shouting, not because of threat, because the truth was visible now. Undeniable. Witnessed. Theo knelt and began quietly picking up the Lego pieces from the ground. One by one. Carefully, like each was still worth saving. Without a word, 3 men in denim knelt beside him and helped. No grand gesture, just hands. Steady. Respectful. Elena pressed her fist to her mouth to hold in the sound rising in her chest. Something between grief and relief. The weight of witnesses had shifted the world. The morning had shifted. You could feel it, an invisible tilt like the world was slowly realigning toward something truer. But the shift wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was in the rustle of papers, the quiet tapping of phone screens, the deliberate steps of people who knew exactly what they were doing. The legal team, 3 attorneys, 2 paralegals, and a retired clerk who had seen 40 years of courthouse halls, set up a folding table on the sidewalk as if they had rehearsed it. A printer hummed off a portable battery pack. A laptop screen glowed in the soft morning light. Stacks of forms were clipped neatly, tabs marked in different colors. They did not ask for attention. They created structure in the middle of chaos. "Elena," one of the attorneys said gently, "we're filing an ex parte motion today. Emergency request. It bypasses normal scheduling." Elena wasn't sure she breathed properly when she answered. Does that mean we can get back inside?" "It means the judge will see the case." Today. The attorney didn't promise, but there was something in her tone. A direction. Behind them, Randy paced on the porch like a trapped dog realizing the fence was real. What are you even filing? He snapped. We have a lease. The older paralegal held up a legal pad without looking up. A lease signed by a property manager who doesn't exist, she said. That's not… The second paralegal flipped a printout toward him. Robert Davidson, supposed property manager. Social Security number belongs to a man who died in 2016. And the notary? The attorney added, tapping a highlighted row on a registry audit. Stamp registered to a notary whose license expired 8 years ago. She passed away 5 years ago. The seal was either forged or stolen. Each sentence wasn't just information, it was nails. In a coffin Randy hadn't realized he was building. One of the men in leather vests leaned slightly, murmuring just loud enough for those closest to hear. Paper beats paper. And it did. Across the street, the church deacon, a soft-spoken man with gentle hands, opened his phone and began live streaming. He didn't deliver commentary. He narrated like a teacher reading a book aloud. This is the documentation. Here are the county property records. This is the title history. These are the notarization logs. He walked slowly, respectfully, ensuring every viewer could see the evidence without distortion. Within minutes, the live stream comments surged. So the lease is fake. The notary was dead? Excuse me? Oh, this is over. They really tried to scam a nurse? Nah. Justice coming on a Thursday morning, bless. The chat scrolled so fast the deacon couldn't read it, but he didn't need to. The truth had already left his hands and begun to move on its own. One neighbor texted her sister. Her sister texted her coworker. Her coworker posted to a city forum. The story was no longer local. It was spreading. Randy finally snapped. This is harassment. This is doxing. This is illegal. He lifted his phone and began his own live stream. I'm being mobbed by a criminal gang. They're trying to steal my house. His camera framed the crowd. Workers, pastors, contractors, attorneys. No leather, no weapons, no threats. And then he made his fatal mistake. He turned the camera on Theo. And this brat? He's been coached. His mom's running a scam sympathy act. Before he could finish, the live stream chat erupted. You kicked his toys. We saw the video. You dumped their belongings. Stop talking. Buddy, you're done. The internet already picked a side, and it's not yours. Turn the camera off before your lawyer cries. Randy's expression flickered from anger to fear to something smaller. Panic hiding behind bluster. He ended the stream mid-sentence. But it was too late. The internet does not forget. Sirens approached. Not fast, not urgent, controlled. The same 2 officers stepped out of the patrol car. The younger one kept his head down. The older one scanned the scene like he'd been waiting for this shift to happen. This time, they didn't ask Elena to step back. They didn't keep distance. Morning, Miss Cruz. The older officer's tone was different now. Grounded, respectful. May we see the new evidence packet? The attorney handed him a neat folder. He read silently. The officer's jaw tightened. Not in conflict, in confirmation. He turned to Randy. Sir, the documentation you provided last night appears to be fraudulent. This is now a criminal matter. We need you and your occupants to remain on the property until the sheriff arrives to supervise possession review. Randy sputtered. You can't. The officer didn't raise his voice. I can. And I am. Emily backed toward the door. We didn't know it was fake. We just… She stopped. The excuses sounded hollow to her own ears now. The officer didn't argue. He didn't need to. Paperwork was speaking louder than voices. Elena watched it all like she was underwater. Sound muted. Shapes slow. She felt movement happening around her. justice assembling itself piece by piece. But her body was frozen. Her mind kept whispering, "This is too good. Something will go wrong. They will take it back. It never works for people like us. Hope can be a dangerous thing. Exhaustion tries to kill it before disappointment can." Vincenzo stepped closer, not to touch her, not to intrude, just near enough to be steady beside her. "You're shaking," he observed softly. She exhaled, voice breaking. "I don't know if this is real. I don't know if it's safe to believe it." "It's real," he said. "Not a promise, a statement." "How do you know?" she whispered. He looked at the house, not with sentiment, but with certainty. "Because the law is on your side. And the truth is documented. And we are not here to fight. We are here to witness, and witnesses change everything." Elena swallowed hard. Her chest hurt. Her legs trembled. But this time, she did not fall. The momentum had turned, and the day was far from over. The courthouse smelled like old wood and cold air. Not unfriendly, just indifferent. The kind of place where lives turned quietly, without ceremony. Where the world shifted not with shouting, but with signatures and gavel cracks. Elena walked in beside two attorneys, her steps small and careful, like she was afraid the ground might vanish. Vincenzo Mr. V. Marchetti walked just behind her, not leading, not guiding, simply there. Solid. 3 men in work jackets followed, silent as stone. They didn't look like muscle. They looked like men who could rebuild a roof in a day and carry grief without dropping it. No one spoke on the way up the courthouse steps. There was nothing to say. Inside Department 4B, the fluorescent lights hummed. A bailiff nodded them forward. The bench loomed, the seal above it casting long authority. And Randy was already there. He looked smaller without the porch beneath him. His shirt clung to him with damp sweat. His hair was pressed to one side as if he'd tried to correct it and given up halfway. His lawyer, thin, anxious eyes behind smudged glasses, was riffling through a stack of papers that looked like they'd been printed in the car. Randy glanced back and saw Elena. For one flicker of a second, his face softened. Fear? Regret? Something almost human. But then his jaw clenched, and the old defiance returned, brittle and frantic. The judge entered. Everyone rose. She didn't look like someone who yelled. She didn't need to. Her presence alone ordered stillness. The clerk read the case. Names, dates, the phrase unlawful detainer, the words emergency motion. The judge adjusted her glasses. "Counsel," she said crisply, "I have reviewed the filings submitted this morning. I want oral clarification on 3 items. We will proceed quickly." Randy's lawyer attempted a smile that wilted halfway. "Your Honor, before we begin, I'd like to note that my clients are being subjected to—" "No," the judge said, without looking up. Silence. Thick. Absolute. The attorney sat back down. She turned to Elena's counsel. "Begin." Elena's attorney did not raise her voice. She didn't posture. She simply slid a bound packet forward, page corners color-tabbed. "Your Honor, this is the ex parte petition, supported by chain of title documentation confirming Ms. Cruz as the sole legal owner. The opposing party submitted a lease. That lease lists a property manager who does not exist, a notary who is deceased, and payment transfers that do not trace to any licensed entity." The judge nodded. "I read this. Show me the notarization evidence." The paralegal stepped forward and placed a single printed page on the bench. The judge studied it, lips pressing into a line. "Dead 8 years, she murmured, yet her stamp was used last month." Randy shifted in his seat. His lawyer wiped his forehead. The courthouse clock ticked. "And the payment trail?" the judge asked. Elena's attorney clicked a small remote, projecting a clear, color-coded timeline onto the wall monitor. Transactions, dates, names that didn't match anything legitimate. The judge turned to Randy's attorney. "Counsel, do you have anything to assert legitimacy of this lease?" His lawyer opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "Your Honor, we were provided this document by a third party under the belief that—" "No," the judge said again, calm as a closing door. "I will not entertain conjecture." Her tone did not rise. It did not need to. It was the sound of something snapping cleanly and finally. Randy swallowed hard. He looked at Elena again, but now there was no defiance in him. Only the realization that his situation was no longer performative. No audience, no porch, no cameras he could yell into, just truth and consequence. The judge set the packet down. "This court finds that the defendants are occupying the property without legal right or standing. The lease document submitted is fraudulent. The notary stamp is stolen. The property manager named does not exist." Randy's lawyer slumped. One of the work jacket men exhaled, slow and measured. The judge continued, her words carved rather than spoken. "Immediate possession is granted to the rightful owner, Elena Cruz." Elena's hand flew to her mouth, but no sound came. "The Sheriff's Department is authorized to enforce removal by 1400 hours today." Mr. V closed his eyes once, not relief. Recognition. Damages are reserved for future hearing. Fraud charges to proceed under county jurisdiction. The gavel came down. Sharp. Final. The courtroom did not erupt. There was no cheering, no dramatic gasp. Just breath leaving and returning, as if everyone had been holding it for hours. Elena lowered into her chair before her knees could fail. Her shoulders shook. Not with sobbing, but something deeper, quieter. Relief that had been waiting behind a locked door for too long. A hand settled on her shoulder. Not heavy, not claiming. Just there, steady, warm, present. Vincenzo didn't speak. He didn't have to. His silence said everything. You are not alone. You were never alone. And now, no one will ever take this from you again. Across the aisle, Randy looked at the floor. His lawyer began whispering rapidly, but Randy wasn't listening. His breath came in little broken gulps. The fight had left him. The performance, the facade. It was over. And he knew it. When the bailiff called the next case, the world moved on around them, as if lives had not just permanently changed, as if a home had not just been reclaimed, as if justice had not just stepped out of the shadows and into the daylight. Elena rose slowly. Mr. V remained beside her, hands folded neatly behind his back. The attorneys gathered their folders with quiet precision. The men in work jackets opened the courtroom doors. And outside, the sun was shining. The day was theirs again. The sheriff's cruiser rolled to the curb just as the afternoon sun angled across the street, drawing long shadows that reached the front porch of Elena's house. The air was strangely still. No raised voices, no barking orders, only the quiet rustle of jackets and the faint hum of distant traffic. 300 men stood in formation along the sidewalk, in the yard, and across the street. Not blocking, not threatening, merely witnessing. The sheriff stepped out first. He was middle-aged, sturdy, with a face lined by work and years. Behind him, 2 deputies approached the front door. No one else moved. It was the kind of silence that had weight to it, like the world knew it was time to listen. "Ready?" the sheriff asked, eyes flicking to Elena. She didn't speak, but she nodded. It was small, steady, enough. The deputies knocked, not hard, but firm, authority without aggression. Sheriff's Department, you have been ordered to vacate this property immediately. No answer. One deputy knocked again. This time the door cracked open. Randy stood there. His face had lost all its swagger. The sweat-darkened collar of his shirt clung to him. His eyes darted behind the deputies toward the wall of quiet witnesses lining the street. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The sheriff didn't raise his voice. Mr. Pike, you and the other occupants need to gather your personal belongings now. You cannot remove anything that does not belong to you. We will supervise. Randy swallowed. His jaw worked like he wanted to argue. But the crowd outside wasn't made of anger. It was made of truth. And the law had spoken. Tina appeared behind him, pale and shaking. The third squatter, Derek, hovered halfway down the hallway, holding a backpack that rattled like tools inside. He froze when a deputy's eyes narrowed. "Only your property," the deputy said. "Nothing else leaves this house." The three of them moved inside like they were underwater. The sheriff turned to Elena. "We'll handle it." She nodded. Her hands were clasped tightly against her stomach, but her shoulders no longer collapsed inward. She stood on her own porch, not as someone begging to be believed, but as someone who had endured the storm and was still standing. Inside, the sound of movement echoed. Drawers opening, footsteps pacing, hurried whispers. The deputies followed them room to room, watching. The front door opened again 5 minutes later. Randy stepped out first, carrying a lamp under one arm. A simple lamp, metal base, warm yellow shade. Elena recognized it instantly. It had belonged to her father. She remembered the soft circle of light it cast on late nights he worked in the garage. She remembered being small, tracing shapes on the wall while he sanded wood. The sheriff blocked Randy's path. "That lamp stays." Randy stiffened. "This was in our room." "It's listed in the personal property inventory the attorneys submitted." Randy's voice scraped. "It's a lamp." "And not yours," the sheriff replied. Randy looked around. Cameras pointed, phones angled, 300 men silent. He stared down at the lamp. His grip loosened. It slipped from his hands and hit the grass, slanting against his shoe. Humiliation is not loud. It is quiet. He bent, set the lamp gently on the porch step, and walked back inside. No one smirked. No one gloated. Even the crowd understood. This was punishment enough. When Tina emerged, she carried 2 flimsy trash bags, stuffed so full the plastic stretched white. Derek carried only the backpack, now softer, emptied of whatever he'd tried to take. The sheriff gestured to their car, a sun-bleached sedan, dull and cracked along the hood, parked crookedly by the curb. They approached it slowly, weighed down not by bags, but by being seen. Cameras rolled. Neighbors stood across lawns, Mrs. Ruiz holding her mail against her chest, the Patels standing side by side on their porch, the retired couple from the corner leaning silently on their railing. People who had watched Elena grow up. People who had once rung her father's doorbell for help with leaky faucets and broken fence panels. Silence stretched long and careful. Randy loaded the bags into the trunk. Derek slid into the back seat. Tina sank into the passenger seat, her shoulders hunched, staring forward at nothing. Randy stood outside his door a moment longer, looking at Elena. Maybe he searched for anger. Maybe he expected triumph. Maybe he needed her to scream so he could feel like he hadn't lost everything. But Elena didn't move. She didn't flinch. She simply looked at him. Not with hatred, just truth. He got in the car. The sheriff stepped back. Engines remained silent. Only the sedan made a sound, its ignition coughing before catching. The tires rolled slowly away from the curb. The car turned at the end of the street and disappeared from view. Not one person clapped. Not one person jeered. No celebration. Because this was not a victory parade. It was the end of something that never should have begun. When the last trace of the car vanished, the street did not erupt. It exhaled. The sheriff nodded once to Elena. "It's yours again? We'll stay until the locksmith finishes the change-out." "Thank you," she whispered. He tipped his head and walked back to his cruiser. 300 men remained, still and respectful, like a guard of honor rather than an army. And only then, only when it was over, did Mr. V step forward. Not to take credit, not to say remember what I did. He simply stood beside Elena. No words, just presence. The kind that does not need to announce itself. The kind that says, "You have your home. You are safe now, and safety does not leave." The sun slid across the roof of the house. The door stood open. No fear remained. The house was quiet for a long moment after the squatters left. Too quiet. The kind of silence that comes after chaos, where your ears still expect shouting, where your muscles still brace for the next blow. Elena stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, afraid to step inside. Afraid of what she would see. Afraid of what had been done to the place that had held her father's laughter, her childhood, her son's first steps. Mr. V didn't speak. He just nodded to the men. They moved gently, not a stampede, not a takeover, just steady, practiced steps. Boots on wood floors, toolboxes opening, tarps being rolled out, trash bags unfurled. It was choreographed without needing choreography. They didn't need orders. They'd done this before. For burnt homes, flooded basements, widowed grandmothers, veterans with no one left to call. They knew how to rebuild a life. Elena finally stepped inside, and it hurt. The walls were smudged gray with dirt and fingerprints. Cabinets hung open. Dishes were cracked. The smell of old smoke clung to the hall like something alive. Theo's room had been ransacked. Books on the floor, pillowcase torn, the small plastic rocket ship collection that had once lined his windowsill scattered and broken. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. A small sound escaped her. Not a cry, not a sob, just a sound a heart makes when it realizes how much it has lost. "Don't look at the damage," a voice said softly beside her. She turned. It was one of the men in a paint-stained jacket. Late 40s, tired eyes, hands like someone who'd held too many hammers. "Look at what's about to happen instead." He gave a small smile, the kind you give a frightened child before a medical shot, then walked past her to begin gathering trash into bags. In the living room, someone moved furniture with quiet efficiency. In the kitchen, a team wiped counters with industrial cleaner. Windows were opened to let out stale air. A fan hummed to life. A broom swept. A vacuum growled. No one shouted instructions. No one bragged. No one even spoke loudly. Work itself was the language. In Theo's room, 3 men knelt on the floor, sorting. One picked up broken rocket parts and began matching pieces. Nose cones to boosters, fins to fuselages. Another wiped dust from the bookshelf, resetting picture frames upright. The third removed the torn pillowcase and replaced it with a fresh one, navy blue with small white stars, the exact kind a boy dreams under. Theo stood in the doorway, small fists curled at his sides, trying not to cry. A man with a silver beard looked up. "Astronaut, huh?" Theo blinked, surprised. "Yeah." "You ever hear about Apollo 13? The man asked, kneeling so they were eye level. Theo nodded. The one that almost didn't make it. That's right. The man clicked 2 pieces of plastic together, restoring the rocket's tail fin. They didn't get home because everything went right. They got home because they fixed what was broken. Piece by piece, with their hands, and they didn't give up. Theo stood very still. The man placed the repaired rocket gently in his hands. Seems to me you've got the same kind of fight. Theo clutched the rocket to his chest as if it had a heartbeat. In the backyard, men pulled weeds, pruned roses, reset the fence along the west side. Someone had brought a bag of mulch. Someone else brought a flat of new flowers, violets and marigolds, the kind that bloom hardy and bright. A garden reborn in a single afternoon. The swing hanging from the old oak tree had been cut in half during the squatter's stay. Now, a carpenter measured the beam carefully, sanded new wood, and began constructing a replacement swing with smooth edges and hand-tied rope. Elena watched from the porch, numb and overwhelmed. "No one expects you to help today," Mr. V said quietly. She wiped at her cheeks. "I don't know how to thank any of you." "You already have," he replied. Her brow creased. "I dash." "You saved a child," he reminded. "My granddaughter. You did it without thinking, without weighing cost or obligation. Mercy given is never wasted. It just waits." He looked around the yard. The workers, the sunlight, the hum of tools restoring what had been taken. It waited here. Later, someone arrived with a mattress still wrapped in plastic. Queen-sized, firm, clean, new. A delivery slip was signed without discussion. Another carried in a fresh duvet. Someone else hung new curtains. The house felt less like a crime scene and more like a home with each passing hour. The kitchen was scrubbed until the tile shone. The floor was swept and mopped. The trash that had once been thrown into the yard was gone. Not hidden, removed, finished. As dusk settled, a warm amber light filled the rooms. Clean light, gentle light, the kind that makes grief feel survivable. Mr. V stood in the garage, a small brass plaque in his hand. The men had cleared and organized the bench, placing her father's tools carefully back into alignment, each handled with reverence. Elena stepped beside him. "What is that?" she asked softly. "A marker," he said. "A reminder." He held it in the light. In this house, mercy was paid forward. Elena's throat tightened. "You didn't have to." "Yes," he said simply. "I did." He positioned the plaque above the workbench, took 2 nails, and hammered them in with steady, sure taps. No flourish, no ceremony, just truth made visible. When he stepped back, Elena felt something she had not felt in days. Not safety, though it was there. Not relief, though it pulsed through her ribs. She felt belonging. Like the home had opened its doors again, not just physically, but spiritually. Theo ran past her, laughing, new swing ropes creaking gently in the backyard breeze. The house breathed again, and for the first time in what felt like forever. So did she. Elena slept. Not the shallow, trembling, half-awake sleep of the car, not the numb exhaustion that comes after crying until nothing is left. She slept like someone finally allowed to rest. The mattress, new, clean, faintly smelling of cotton and sunshine, held her gently. The house was quiet, not silent with fear, but quiet with safety. A soft breeze toyed with the curtains. Somewhere outside, a mourning dove cooed. Footsteps in the hallway were small and light. Theo, awake already, padding toward the kitchen for cereal. For a moment, Elena just stayed still, absorbing it. Her home, her walls, her air, her peace. When she opened her eyes, the ceiling didn't feel like it was pressing down. The shadows didn't look like looming shapes. The house didn't feel stolen. It felt returned. She sat up slowly, breathing it in. She was finally home. Theo was in the yard when she found him, hair messy, pajamas still on, running barefoot in the dew-damp grass. The new swing swayed gently in the morning breeze. The garden beds, once trampled, now bloomed with soft purple and yellow. The fence stood straight. The oak tree rustled overhead. Theo lifted his repaired rocket ship into the sunlight, letting the light glint across it. "Launch sequence complete," he announced, and the rocket soared into the sky with an 8-year-old's perfect conviction. Elena leaned against the porch railing, watching him. The weight inside her chest was still there, but it was different now. Not dread, something else, something warm, something growing. Neighbors peeked from windows, not prying, watching, guarding. Mrs. Ruiz waved from her yard. The Patels leaned on their porch rail, smiling. The retired couple at the corner sat in lawn chairs, sipping coffee, keeping an eye on the street like it was their shared front line. The neighborhood didn't simply return to normal. It rose around her, not because they pitied her, but because something had been shown, plain and unmissable. No one takes from this street without being seen. The world was different now, safe in a way it hadn't been for years. Late morning brought sunlight sharp and gold across the yard. Elena sat on the porch steps, knees drawn up, chin resting lightly on her hands. She didn't know how long she sat before she noticed the car. It didn't roar up. It didn't make a statement. It simply arrived. A black sedan, polished but not flashy. The engine cut off, and for a long moment, no one got out. Then the door opened, and Vincenzo Marchetti stepped out slowly, like someone used to measuring the weight of each movement. His suit jacket was gray today, understated. No rings, no hat. Just him. His hands were folded behind his back. He walked up the sidewalk, unhurried, the sun glinting off his white hair. He paused at the edge of the porch, not waiting for permission necessarily, but offering space. Elena stood. Neither spoke right away. Theo saw him and paused mid-flight, clutching his rocket. He didn't hide. He didn't run. He simply watched. Mr. V took in the house, the repaired window, the rehung curtains, the flowers in bloom, the swing swaying gently. Then he nodded once, as though confirming that the world had clicked into its correct alignment. "You slept," he said softly. It wasn't a question. Elena's throat tightened. "Yes." "Good." A breeze lifted leaves overhead. Somewhere, a neighbor's wind chime tinkled. He glanced toward Theo, who stood studying him with a child's clear-eyed directness. "He'll be all right," Mr. V murmured. Elena swallowed. "He will. Because of you." He lifted a hand, stopping the words before they formed into debt. "No." His voice was gentle but firm. "This didn't start with me. This started in a supermarket aisle." Elena blinked. "You saved my granddaughter when she could not breathe," he said softly. "You knelt on a dirty floor and you did not hesitate. You didn't ask who she belonged to. You didn't ask for anything in return." Elena nodded slowly. Memory flickered. The rush of panic, the little girls gasping, the frantic search for something, anything to help. And then the spacer, the paper bag, the shaky breaths evening out. "You refused the envelope I offered," he continued. "Do you remember what you told me?" Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "Help someone who needs it. Pass it on. A smile touched his eyes. Not his mouth. Something warm and old and deeply human. Yes. He glanced up at the house again. You saved my granddaughter. He looked back to her. I saved your home. The words hung there, not transactional, not boastful, just true. Then he said the part that mattered. The world doesn't forget kindness, he murmured, no matter how dark it gets. Elena felt something in her chest loosen, not break, release. She nodded. Slow, steady. Vincenzo dipped his head in farewell. It was not dramatic. It was not emotional. It was respectful, as one equal to another. He turned and walked back down the path. Theo took half a step forward, then stopped. The boy didn't speak, just lifted his rocket like a salute. Mr. V paused at the edge of the yard and returned the gesture, the faintest curve of his fingers at his heart. Then he left. No engines revving, no chorus of men, no spectacle, just a man who had done what was right. Elena watched the sedan disappear down the street. She didn't cry. She didn't collapse. She simply breathed. And the breath was whole. Theo ran back into the yard, laughing again. The sun warmed the porch. The house behind her felt alive. Strength, she understood now, wasn't the loud kind. It didn't shout. It didn't threaten. It didn't prove itself. It showed up. Family wasn't always blood. Sometimes it was the ones who stood when the world tried to take everything. And safety, true safety, was something built, defended, shared. Sometimes returned like a gift you didn't realize you had already given. Elena stepped inside her home. The door closed behind her, not shutting out fear, but sealing in peace. If this story has your attention, hit that subscribe button and let us know where in the world you're watching from. Every story we tell connects the past to the present, and we'd love to have you with us for the next one.